All right. Hi there. Welcome, everybody, to Cast Iron Wednesday. And I am way over here because I have no idea where to sit after positioning all of this stuff. But yes, once again, it is Cast Iron Wednesday. This is a tradition that many YouTube cooking channels, or at least the smaller cooking channels, have been doing for quite a while now. I mean, definitely for within the last decade or so. We do a regular cast iron video on Wednesdays just to have fun. Most of the time, it's just about cooking in cast iron or maybe cleaning or restoring cast iron because that's another thing that's really popular here on YouTube. And in my case, in my channel, well, I've been doing a little bit of everything, and I'm very pleased that a number of folks have been kind enough to show up here on a regular basis to give my channel the amount of subscribers it has, as well as the fine people who are kind enough to show up here tonight. Ugh, I gotta get out of this now. Because, yes, as you can see, here is most of the rest of my cast iron collection. And that's what we are going to be looking at tonight. Because I should say right now, no, I am not going to spend this live video talking and ranting and raving about the wonders of the carnivore diet. I mean, I'm only in day 4 of that at this point, and I know technically I'm still adjusting into it, and I've only barely started. So while things are looking pretty good on that respect, I've got quite a ways to go yet before I can really say anything much about that. But nonetheless, hello to everybody who has been kind enough to show up here tonight. Hello to Greg Hart and Honey Badger and Pat Z and K Clock, and hello Val's Black Cats Rules, and Radagast and William Hurt and Clico. Hello Farm Boy 762, and hello Alley-oop 1230, and hello Cynthia Wesley, Rich Qualls, and so many others who again have been kind enough to show up here. And yes, because this is indeed part 2 of my showing off my cast iron collection, because this is about 10 years after the initial video I made in which I first described my cast iron collection. Then 5 years later, I made a video called Cast Iron Collection Part 2. And now here it is, Cast Iron Collection 10 years later. And yeah, I am indeed a little bit embarrassed at how much my collection has grown, even over the past 10 years, in that I'm looking at a lot of these. And a number of these pots were acquired more than 10 years ago. Some of them have only been acquired within the last 5 years. I've shown quite a few of these in my videos, and I'm very pleased about that. So that it does mean that I am rotating through my collection. But yeah, it's amazing how much space cast iron takes up. Hello, Ronald Coward. Yeah, you're not kidding. In that it's going to be a real project to put all this stuff back again once we're done here tonight. But well, hey, I'm the one who chose to do it. So, but yes, I mean, as I said, I'm really trying to identify everything here in my collection, and I'm not sure how to get started because over in the back we have the Dutch ovens. Then from there we move into the baking pans, and that seems to be excuse me, I'm still getting over this GD cold. That really seems to be pretty much, other than all of the skillets that I talked about the 2 weeks ago. That I mean, this again makes up the majority of my other question. Part 2 may take more than 20 minutes to put back. Yeah, tell me about it. Yeah, collecting is not that unusual. There are many of us out there. Yes, indeed, we are the few, the proud, the quiet, well, mostly quiet, except that I tend to go talking on and on during these live videos. But all right, I guess the real question is where to start. I mean, again, we're looking here at yeah, I mean, at least last time I was able to start with number 3s and work my way up. But I guess it might not be a bad plan to start here nice and close and work my way to the back. And the first thing we're seeing here, anyway, are baking pans, which, again, little by little, I've managed to acquire a number of these. Some of them I got at really dirt cheap prices, and I guess that's a good way to start here to talk about something that is not really talked about very often, although it's known to cast iron collectors. Ugh. And that would be the John Wright baking pans, which, yes, I really did not go out of my way to acquire most of these, although I am quite glad to own them. This one, if I remember right, in fact, I found at a flea market in New York, just outside of Buffalo. I believe I paid $10 for this one. Whereas, on the other hand, this interesting one I inherited from my dad. So, yeah, this is in fact the John Wright Ginger House baking pan. Both of these are very thick and heavy. So, yeah, I can't even hold this thing up for very long. But nonetheless, these are the type of things that you usually come across when you least expect them, largely because those John Wright pans, it seems like even today, when cast iron is still going at, where the cost of cast iron is really going up exponentially, the John Wright pans in themselves still generally seem to be sold at low prices here. Handsome Stone, John Wright makes a great gingerbread home. Your spice cookie recipe. Oh, well, thank you very much. But yes, yeah, I know the gingerbread home. I've made an attempt at doing a gingerbread house, and it was, well, not the best. I mean, the actual house and the cookies came out good, but the frosting and decoration, well, let's just say I am not exactly really much of an artist in that respect. Um, and where did the rug go? Yeah, there is some rug underneath here. I will say that much at least. Don't say spring cast iron cleaning and shifting around. It sounds like Cynthia's got herself a little chore to do. But yes, as I mentioned, I've got right here are three pans from John Wright, the gingerbread house. This one is the animal cracker pan. And then there's the Santa Claus, Santa sleigh pan. I mean, technically, most people usually bake cookies in these kind of pans, but there are recipes out there actually for actual crackers, so you can use this to make genuine animal crackers. All of which is interesting. Although, maybe the main reason why the John Wright pans, as nice as they look, are not so popular is probably because technically they're all unitaskers. I mean, you can bake a gingerbread house in this pan, for instance, but that's about it. Although arguably you could say that about quite a few of these baking pans as well. I mean, especially if we go through some of the other and more popular baking pans that we have here, such as these little muffin pans. One is an unmarked Wagner. I managed to get that one for about $12 or so at a flea market because it was unmarked. And the other is a Birmingham Stove and Range muffin pan. And actually, there's one interesting thing about these two that I might want to point out. And that is they're not the same size. This is an unmarked Wagner muffin pan, and you can tell it's a Wagner, especially because of the shape of these holes there by the handle. I'm not sure if you can call it a lifting handle or not. And on the other hand, the BSR muffin pan can also be easily identified because it has a triangle shape there on the handle. So this is unquestionably BSR. On the back side, BSR pan does have a made in USA mark. It's a little hard to see here, I suppose, unless I hold it up close. Whereas the the Wagner pan also has a made in USA mark, although it is more spread out. But the interesting thing is that, as I said, these two are not the same size. Here, let me show you. Let's try it this way. Here we are. The Wagner pan is noticeably larger than the BSR pan, which is interesting, especially since usually BSR made really big versions of everything, but the BSR muffin pan is definitely smaller in size. Both of them have the same number of cups. They have 11 cups on them, which means if you use a BSR pan to make muffins, you are simply going to get smaller muffins. All of the sponsors have the disease. Oh, yeah, I've done some spring tying up myself. Waiting to hear that Cynthia puts an elevator in her basement to the third story so she can store her skillets. Yeah. Hello, Jimmy Langford. Just under the weather. Oh, no, I understand very well. I mean, you can hear in my voice here that I'm still recovering as well. So I certainly know how that turns out. But anyway, as I mentioned, those are baking pans. And of course, we simply can't forget the ever popular cornbread pan, of which all of my cornbread pans happen to be BSR, but I've been lucky enough to manage to collect each one of the cornbread pans that BSR has has produced. And I guess I better put this microphone over here now so that I can point them out. First, of course, is the much more traditional corn stick pan, which again, everybody, I mean, just about everybody and their brother has seen these at flea markets and the like, and a number of us probably have collected at least one of these corn stick pans. And then, of course, we get into, well, I've already told you about the history of this pan, of this remarkable pan, namely the cornbread skillet, the one that really BSR says this was the greatest selling pan in the company's history. It was such an incredible hit that it gave them profitable years, or record profits, I should say, in 1967 and 1968. So yeah, the cornbread skillet is indeed a piece of history. And again, those of us who actually own and use one of these will certainly know that the cornbread skillet is indeed a useful pan. It's not exactly a unitask, or you can bake other things in it. People do use these things to make, like, say, scones or mini pies, or sometimes even brownies. Although there's no question that what this really is for is making cornbread. And likewise, I've managed to acquire the somewhat less common the smaller number 3 size 6 wedge BSR cornbread skillet. This one, if I remember right, I acquired at an antique mall down in Sweetwater, Kentucky, just before Tennessee. Sorry. And that one was on my way to the National Cornbread Festival, in fact, if I remember right. And then, of course, this was a lucky score, and that was the famous Handy Dan cornstick pan. This, of course, was the unique cornstick pan with a handle that BSNR designed and produced only a few years before they went out of business, unfortunately. And that's a shame, actually, because this is a really useful cornstick pan. I mean, I am certainly among the ones who will say that having a handle on this pan makes it really, really convenient, much more convenient than the standard cornstick pan. So yeah, I definitely like this. Ugh. Also, here in the midst of this is the the salmon pan, the fish pan that BSR produced in something like the very last year or two of its existence. You know, this was the one that they made for Eddie Bauer. They made for Eddie Bauer stores, and and it's definitely an unusual piece. And really, that's about the only reason why I acquired it, because it was unusual. And going along here, cleaned in season 1 today. I found a bucket of old copper wire cords that I'm stripping. Oh, well, that's convenient. I made 7 cat head biscuits in my number 10 Wagner pan tonight, but the tops weren't very brown, so I turned on the broiler. Oops. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Radagast. uh, yeah, Rocket Caver, I used to, but not in a while. The microphone picks you up very well from halfway across the room. Oh, really? Well, that's good to know. I'm very glad to hear that in that case. That definitely makes things much more convenient. Okay, we've got, as I said, the corn stick, the hand. This was the salmon pan. And then from here, this actually has nothing to do with BSR. This, in fact, is an old gate marked Turk's Head pan that I acquired at the Brimfield Antique Show back in, I think this was my one in 2021, the one when I went back there after the pandemic. Lodge made a pan very similar to this one in their earliest days, but this is not a Lodge. You can tell that because the handle is not shaped like the earliest Lodge baking pans. Those ones were kind of like M shaped, and this one is not. So all I can say about this is it is an unknown maker, but it has a nice artistic design to it, and I'm quite happy about that. And then finally, among the baking pans here, there are two others here, one of which I only got a couple of years ago, the Lodge Skull baking pan. This, of course, was a part of their Day of the Dead series that they produced, although it's generally considered to be a Halloween item because, you can cook some nice skull-shaped cakes. I like making cornbread in this, especially around Halloween. So, and yeah, this is indeed a really fancy, and it is a unitasker. I mean, there's no way around it. I mean, you can bake things shaped like skulls in it, but of course, that certainly has its own attraction. Excuse me, please. Okay, and what do we have here? Just double checking the comments here as well. Are you from the South? Yeah, exactly. You ever use the Turk head? I have used it a few times. I've tried baking brownies in it, and they kind of dried out. Then one year, I made a whole bunch of cornbread, and I made not cornbread, fruitcake. That was it. I made fruitcake in that Turk's head pan, and that actually turned out pretty good. So yeah, I actually like that. I mean, you just have to understand that the baking time for that Turk's head pan is much shorter than you would in a regular sized pan because of the way that thing is shaped. So that's actually, but yeah, that was something of a learning experience there. I like the skull pan for buns. Yes, you could certainly make buns in that as well. Here they call them cat eye or cat head. Okay. I actually looked up the meaning of the Turk's head pan just to be sure there wasn't any kind of racist implications to it, but not really. It is actually supposedly that they were shaped like the battle helmets or war helmets used by Turkish soldiers during the days of, like, say, around the Crusades or so. And that's why they call it Turk's head, which is fine. I wouldn't really call it racist for that reason. So that's about all I'll say about that. Let me see. Then we can't certainly forget ugh, this unusual pan. And those who have seen this will never forget it. Yeah, namely the pig head pan, which actually Lodge has stated that they are the manufacturer of many of these pans, even though it doesn't have the Lodge logo on it. Actually was made allegedly as a head cheese pan, or mold rather, actually, for shaping head cheese. That's that infamous or famous type of meat similar to sausage that is made especially from the head of the pig. I've used this to make head cheese a couple of times, and I do like that. I've also made a scary looking cornbread in this pan. And this actually is a pretty good baking pan for that reason. How often do you clean and season your cauldron after you use it? Or how do you clean and season your cauldron after you use it? Okay, well, there's a good question. All right. Well, how do I clean it? It's not easy. Essentially, with that big cauldron there, what I have to do is actually set it up outside with the burner, the big propane burner, so that I can get everything nice and hot. Although first, though, I do have to give it a good scrubbing. I still don't use soap with the excuse me, when cleaning the cauldron. But rather, as I said, I do use water and I do my best to scrub everything out and then dump out the extra water. And that is indeed something of a chore. I mean, I would say it would probably take anywhere from an hour to maybe even 2 hours to clean that cauldron after it's done. But anyway, after scrubbing everything out with, as I said, just using a, decent scrubber, I then turn on the propane burner and season it. So that's the best I could say there about that cauldron. I also do that as well before I use it. In that, like say, a day or a week or so before I'm ready to make another huge pot of jambalaya in that cauldron, I do get it out and give it a fresh seasoning as well. So I got three different sized Turks. Nothing prejudiced about it except if you burn stuff. Oops. Well, there we go then. Blackening my Martin stove and range spatula. Oh, you must mean one of those skillet spatulas, I think. The Turk's head I am scrubbing has the M-shaped handle, but isn't it solid between the Turk's head? But isn't solid between the Turk's heads. Lodge? Yeah, most of these pans are indeed a PITA, especially these muffin pans. Trying to get inside these little crevices underneath is indeed a PITA, and you really need a special kind of brush to do it. Um, my understanding is I'm hearing an echo upstairs. Oh man, I think my desktop computer is actually tuned into this live. Okay, well, so be it. Anyway, my understanding is Lodge did indeed make the Turk's head pan with the M shape and the spaces between the between the actual cups. So my understanding is that is indeed an early Lodge pan, although I would suggest getting a second opinion as well, because I'm not that much of an encyclopedic lodge expert. Kitty is hiding in the cauldron. Um, no, actually, she isn't. I'm sorry to say. I don't think my cats have ever jumped into that big cauldron. They love cardboard boxes, but they really don't get into that big cauldron. Did you hear Lodge is making their Finex skillets with a rough surface? How many Finex do you have? Yes. I have one first generation Finex skillet from 2014, which was made with a glass smooth surface. And it is true that they did indeed redesign the surface of the Finex so that it is somewhat more rough. And however, Finex is not the only company that is doing that in terms of the modern cast iron makers. Um, Stargazer is also giving their pans a more rough surface, and so is Field for that matter. And the reason why is because they find it is easier to hold the seasoning. When these pans first came out, these elite pans from Finex and from Stargazer and from Field and from other companies, they were indeed machined with glass smooth surfaces. Some companies, I understand, are still doing that. I'm not sure if Smithy is as well. Um, excuse me. But those pans have been a real PITA to hold seasoning. It took me a good 2 to 3 years before I could get some good seasoning on my Finex pan and also on my Stargazer pan. I took a lot of stubborn use and repeated attempts at reseasoning it before I was able to get the seasoning to hold. And now that I've been able to do so, it is indeed doing good. However, a lot of people don't have that patience, unfortunately. I mean, that's why when these people buy these cast iron pans and the seasoning starts coming off and they start getting surface rust on it, the first thing they do is to complain to the company. And so as a result, Finex and Stargazer and Butterpat and Field and a number of other manufacturers, they all got a lot of complaints about how these things were so difficult to season. And that was why the decision was made, not just with Finex. I mean, yes, I suppose probably because Finex is owned by Lodge, that might be one reason to do with it. However, Stargazer and Field and the others are still independent companies. And yet they're doing the same thing. They are not putting a glass smooth polished surface on their cast iron anymore because, well, obviously they have to sell their product. And so because of that, even those pans made these days do not have a smooth polished surface. It is still actually correction. It is still a smooth surface. It just has very, very fine rough edge. Excuse me. Yeah, they get them to Goodwill and then I go get them. Yeah, exactly, Corey Clark. People have indeed found those $100 and $200 skillets from Butter Pat and Smithy and Finex. They have found them at Goodwill for precisely that reason. People, buy them, then they don't know how to take care of them. And so they finally just give up and throw them out. And so be it, which means, as you say, their trash is our treasure. Okay. Anyway, Lodge 1 looks more like Griswold. Okay. Lodge 1. Well, okay, that's a different subject, I guess. But anyway, I wonder why the inside of Lodge are different in texture from the outside. I'm sure there's a reason for it. I mean, after all, the company has a really serious product development department. Goes hand in hand, of course, with their goes hand in hand naturally with the complaint department because naturally, again, they want to sell their product and they want to be sure that they're getting this as they're appealing to as many customers as they can. And that was one of the reasons why they came out with their rougher surface, especially for their seasoning process. And as you know, Honey Badger, that was really what saved the company from bankruptcy. So that's the main reason why Lodge will never return to the old days of smooth, polished skillets. All right, get yourself a cold beverage. Yeah, okay, give me a second, actually. This cough has been a real nuisance. How long have I had this for? A month? Anyway, let me take a swig. Ah. Don't worry, that was just Pepsi. And yeah, I do think that helped. It was nothing illegal. Okay. So, how do you think they make a different they may make a different fluted pan style? Okay, that's good. That gives me an excuse to turn back to these pans because that's what exactly we have here. Here is the Lodge fluted pan. The cast iron bunt pan that really is not a bunt pan because the name bunt is trademarked by Nordic. And so, oh, actually, for that matter, the name bunt was invented by Nordic too. So, so technically, that really, I mean, again, bunt is a made up name, whereas they were making these fluted cake pans as early as the 19th century. Lodge wasn't, but other manufacturers were, especially in Europe. But anyway, here is the fluted cake pan. And the inside of the fluted cake pan is actually fairly smooth. I would not say it has a glass smooth surface, but it is nice and smooth on the inside. It definitely does not have a rough polished surface. And I think the reason why is because when Lodge probably was not able to redesign the fluted cake pan with that kind of a surface, or maybe there just was no reason for them to design it with that kind of a surface. When, especially since they were trying to reproduce this for their legacy series. And yeah, the interesting thing is that people were demanding that Lodge bring back the cake pan. And so they brought back the cake pan and let it sell out. And then people started demanding again that they bring back the cake pan. And that was why they re released the cake pan for the second time, although they no longer call it part of their legacy series. And yeah, I love that fluted pan, says Jamie Ledgerwood. So do I. I really enjoy making these kind of cakes in this fluted cake pan, largely because my cakes in these pans are much more successful than my attempts to make layer cakes. Excuse me again. Could you make bread in that fluted cake pan? Yes. You could make anything in this fluted cake pan, really. I have made I've roasted a chicken in this cake pan. A couple of times I've simply cooked bacon in this cake pan, especially to help improve the seasoning. It's a cast iron pan and you can make anything with it. I have indeed made bread in this pan at least a couple of times. I've made a big, really heavy cornbread in this pan. Oh, yeah. Once I even filled it with cookie dough and made a huge bunt cookie. And the interesting thing about this, okay, I'll say this. When I made that huge bunt cookie, it looked great when it came out. The problem is when I took it to work, everybody thought it was a cake. And because it was as tough as a cookie, everybody thought the cake was stale. You know, they were expecting a moist cake, and instead they got a nice solid cookie. So I had to tell them it was a cookie, and I had to tell them, no, it wasn't stale. That's exactly how it was supposed to be. Yes, I did make monkey bread in this too. You're correct, Mark. That's right. You should make meatloaf in a lamb mold. Yes, indeed. We are in lamb mold seasoning, aren't we? Yeah, in fact, I should do break out the lamb mold this weekend. All right. Didn't you make monkey bread? But as I said, yes, I did. And that is one of the other popular uses for a bundt pan, of course. Besides cakes, a lot of people make monkey bread in them. But yes. Okay. And hello, VL Triple X as well. I bet that monkey bread was tough getting cleaned up. It was actually pretty easy. I mean, the thing is, sugar, when you bake sugar onto a cast iron pan, I've found out it comes off very easily. All you have to do is scrub it with hot water, and that really dissolves the sugar and it comes out with no difficulty at all. So yeah, that's why, as I said, I would not hesitate to make things like monkey bread in this particular pan once again, and that's why I love making cakes in this pan as well. But anyway, Honey Badger had mentioned about the surface of a cake of the fluted cake pan. As I said, I think it's because it simply matches the design of the original fluted cake pan. All right. Well, yes. And hello, Robert Lozano. And yes, well, thank you very much. And welcome to this little channel. And spiral potatoes. Yes, I know. Spiral potatoes. That's one of those things. It's like I'm always saying that I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it. Well, I will make it. Excuse me. But since I'm trying to show off my collection here, let's put down this cake pan. Damn it. And show off this cake pan. This one is definitely not made by Lodge. I'm assuming it was made in Europe. It is slightly smaller than the Lodge cake pan. However, it is definitely thicker than the Lodge cake pan. This thing is really darn heavy. And yeah, this is a wonderful cake pan as well because, it has a different design to it. And I certainly do enjoy making cakes in this pan as well. And I also found that having two cast iron cake pans actually can be useful because there are times when you do need to make two cakes. I've managed to acquire at least three other fluted cake pans over the 15 years or so I've had this hobby. But the other three I ended up selling or giving away because I found that for me, maybe just because I'm by myself and I'm not a professional baker, I really have not. Having three cake pans was excessive in that I was using one and most of the time. I was sometimes using two. I almost never used three cake pans. So I ended up devastating myself with those. Wish list for summer, fluted cake pan. Husband might hide my body though. Well, the Lodge fluted cake pan, what are they selling it for? $70, $80? All things considered, that's not a bad investment. I know this isn't cast iron, but I made bread in a large tomato can after cutting out the top. Well, I believe it too. And so have I. I've made Boston brown bread, the bread that you steam in a can. And yes, it does turn out good too. The Lodge bunt pans have changed a lot. My 50s Lodge is really smooth compared to the later versions. Well, that's actually interesting, Honey Badger. I've never acquired a vintage Lodge bunt pan. So I really don't have an excuse. I really can't make an explanation for it. I can think of one explanation though regarding the bunt pan, in that I was present at a Q&A, a question and answer session with Lodge representatives, and somebody brought up the fluted cake pan. And the response that the guy from Lodge gave was that the fluted cake pan has been a real beast, or I'll even say it, a real bitch to produce. Excuse me. Again, I'm sorry. When they make that cake pan and it goes through quality control, apparently the fluted cake pan has a failure rate of as high as 20 to maybe 25%. Almost as many of 1 out of 4 of those cake pans never make it off the production line because they are so difficult to make. So that might be one reason why the modern day, the modern day DISA automated production simply may not have the capability to produce a really, really smooth cake pan the way that it did for Lodge back in the 50s or so. So that might be one possibility as well. They've made a few versions, but I can't find my notes on how many. My understanding is, if nothing else, the modern day cake pan is still the same size as the 50s, the vintage modern cake pan. So that's good. The rabbit mold is also very cool. Yes, and I've never been able to acquire a rabbit mold yet. Although now that you mention it, I actually forgot to get this off the shelf. So I think I'd better do that right now. Carefully. Ugh. Yeah, there we go. How could I have forgotten the lamb mold? Yeah, which was also an eBay score. I managed to get this about 3 years ago, I think. Yes, I managed to actually get this for only about I don't know, with shipping and handling, I think it was about $50 or so. So that was not bad, especially when I posed this to the experts on Facebook, and most of them said this is actually an unmarked Wagner lamb mold. So I'm actually quite happy about that. The Lodge lamb mold has a little hole in the side so that you can put a little testing stick or toothpick in to be sure that the cake is done. This lamb mold does not have that. So, but nonetheless, I have used this a few times. I have to admit, I've been slack so far, and I have not yet made a lamb cake. And here it is that Easter is just a few days away. Boy, I can see I've got a couple of projects coming this weekend. Let me put this down somewhere safe. All right. Okay, may or may not have two first generation pans and Mark Wagner, European, a Gugeluf, and an enameled dolman. Oh, I see. So Handsome Stone, you have quite a few of those cake pans. Well, congratulations for that. That huge pot in the back looks like something straight out of a fantasy novel. Oh, yes. That is indeed my 15-gallon cauldron. And in fact, if you look on my channel, only the other day I produced a video that included that. That was the video I have there that says I spent over $100 on each of these cast iron pans. And yes, that cauldron is indeed was indeed one of them. I am not going to pick up that cauldron and bring it over here, though, I'm afraid. I will have to add, I mean, folks have seen that cauldron in my videos before, and I will ask if you want to look at that. Oh, yeah, Miss Mobley, she was just down here. But when I do these videos, usually she just goes upstairs and waits. But anyway, as I said, if you want a closer look at the cauldron, again, look on my channel. I've got a couple of videos on it, including one that I just produced the other day. But yes, that is indeed I'm probably the pride and joy of my collection. However, if you'll notice, look to the right of that, and there seems to be a miniature version of that cauldron. That's not my poiky, by the way. I've shown this off a few times. This is, in fact, an unknown cast iron cauldron. And this I found on my birthday. I found it at an antique mall in Bedford, Massachusetts, and I paid $20 for this big cauldron. This is a big cauldron, all right. I mean, I think it might be close to 12 inches deep as well as that far across. So this is a pretty decent sized cauldron here, especially from the fact that I found it on my birthday. I do consider it to be something special, even though I have never been able to identify it. The ears, the flat top ears, do suggest that it may indeed be a vintage cauldron, as well as the fact that it has this sprue mark here on the side. All right, the $100 short video. Well. Thank you very much, Greg Hart. I'm glad you like that too. So I give away more cake than I eat. Yes, exactly. How about some cast iron twister? Well, as you can see, that's what I'm doing. My lodges have an L under one handle and a single dot under the other. Well, that's interesting. But yes, I mean, this just happens to be. I think I acquired this before I acquired the big cauldron. In fact, so for a while, this may very well have been my oldest cast iron pot, but it is. It's certainly not now. The That cauldron there is probably about 200 years old. This one, by the way, I have indeed used. I've actually used this as a deep fryer, and I've cooked whole chickens in this, and I'm quite happy about that. There's one problem with this particular cauldron. The legs are actually broken off, and this cauldron does not sit flat. If you put it on any surface, it definitely wobbles. So, however, that's really not much of a problem because what you can do is just simply hang it on a tripod. And so there you go. You hang it over your fire or heat source, and you've got yourself a perfectly good vintage cast iron cauldron. So I'm quite happy about that. Twister, huh? Ugh. 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 And also there, oh yeah, I have indeed filled it with Halloween candy every year. That is really my Halloween cauldron as well, so that I can use a genuine cast iron cauldron when giving out candy to the kids. Go right out of the video with a huge call as soon as we're done here. Well, yes, DB Cooper, and I do hope you like it. So, also way back there are a number of pans that I have indeed used and shown off in quite a few of my videos here. Let me see if I can take this mic so that I can at least point them out. A number of these, again, I have shown, I've mentioned quite a bit. Like, for instance, Birmingham Stove and Range Red Mountain number 8 Dutch oven, which I'm quite happy about that. I think I've only had this for going on almost 2 years. Yeah, I think that's about right. And this one is, in fact, a BSNR handwritten number 8 pot. And the interesting thing about this is that the inside of this pot has been polished to your famous glass smooth surface. On the other hand, here's another one I've actually shown a lot: the Griswold number 8 Dutch oven, which I'm also quite happy about. That was another Brimfield score. And over here is the huge number 12 BSNR Red Mountain. Actually, it's a Century Series cauldron, or Century Series number 12 Dutch oven with a Red Mountain lid. I've mentioned a couple of times that I am always on the lookout for a genuine Red Mountain number 12 Dutch oven. I have no idea if I will ever find one at any time for the rest of my life, but who knows? Moving right along. Ugh. Over here is another one you've seen a lot. The number 3 South African boiki, the best duty one that's Asian made, was imported into South Africa and then was brought here to the United States, and that's where I bought it. I've done a lot in this poiki because that one also looks like a cauldron. I've done careful shit. Okay, then over here is probably my second biggest pot. And this is the Bayou Classic 16 quart or 4-gallon Dutch oven. And it is indeed Asian made. Bayou Classic is an American company that has their cast iron pots made in Asia and imported here into the United States. I've had this and I've used this and I've loved this 4-gallon pot since 2012. So we're talking like 12 years going on 13 years. And so anybody who talks about Asian cast iron, I will say I have been using this huge pot again for almost 13 years. I'm not dead, and I really enjoy that pot. Furthermore, Lodge and any other American manufacturer never made a Dutch oven of that size, not 4 gallons in size. So that was all part of the reason why I got that, and I have not regretted it one moment. Still going on here. We've got 3 other pots that I've shown off quite a few times. This is the Lodge Sportsman deep fryer with the with the lid. I'll bring the lid back closer to you, along with the deep fryer, the Birmingham Stove and Range deep fryer that I found at Brimfield, and the Birmingham Stove and Range shallow fish fryer, which is an enormously useful pan. I wonder if I can talk and walk at the same time. Those shallow fish fryers are actually fairly common and not too hard to find. And anybody who has one of those knows it is an enormously useful cast iron pan because that one is essentially the same as an oversized cast iron skillet. You can do anything in that shallow fryer that you can do in a cast iron skillet. You just happen to have to set it over 2 burners on the stovetop. You may be obtaining a lady for the house, spending money on cast iron. Right now, as later. Okay. Anyway, yeah, I've seen the Petromax. Have I seen the Petromax cake pan with a dragon on its lid? I have missed that one actually. I'm gonna have to look that one up. You're going to need a visit from your new family to put all this iron back on the racks. Yeah, tell me about it. Or more likely, spend an hour or more putting all of these things back. However, as promised, here's a close-up of the lid. This was indeed the lid to the model 3060 deep fryer. Lodge acquired this from Birmingham Stove and Range, the deep fryer that is, along with the rest of the Sportsman grill, when they, after BS&R went out of business and passed their design on to Lodge. And the first thing Lodge did was, again, they did this with the design of the Wildlife series because they were doing this at the same time they were making their first generation of the Wildlife series pans. And this indeed is, I love this thing, not just for the design, but also for the fact that it has a grill underneath. So if I want to do some grilling, I could certainly do it with this. So yeah, this is indeed quite useful as well. And I have already said how great those big oval roasters and the shallow fryer are. And I'm very glad to have managed to acquire those. Okay, you're going to need a visit. Yeah, it seems like those fish fryers would be great for fried chicken. Absolutely. I have made fried chicken in those pans. You can do anywhere from 5 to 6 pieces of chicken at once in one of those deep fryers. And in fact, I did some heavy duty frying with both of those fryers at the same time. And so I was able to fry 10 pieces of chicken at a time, which means it took less than an hour to fry 20 pieces of chicken. So yeah, I was quite happy with that. I had that same video about spending $100 each on those cast iron pans also describes the story of how I got this large deep fryer and lid, and I'm quite happy about that. The other one, the Red Mountain deep fryer, on the other hand, was one of those incredible scores, once again at Brimfield, that I didn't think I would ever come across. The the Red Mountain deep fryer with its triangular handle, just like the shallow fryer, that was one I didn't even know it existed until a few years after I got into this cast iron hobby. I saw photos of it on the BSNR Facebook group. That was one of those things I didn't think I would ever come across in real life. And so when I came across that at Brimfield with a $40 price tag, my jaw dropped. This was one of those scores that I simply could not walk away from. So even though I had a deep fryer, I got a second deep fryer. And I'm glad to use both of them. In fact, actually, I had just sworn to myself just tonight I'm going to be starting using that Red Mountain deep fryer a lot more now because I'm on this diet, this carnivore diet. Over just the past few days, I've done a lot of, I've roasted a lot of stuff in the oven, and I got my oven pretty dirty pretty fast from splattering grease. So I said tonight, I'm going to start using that deep fryer there now for roasting more of my chicken to help cut down on the splatter and so that I don't have to clean the oven every other day. So I can only hope that helps. All right. I knew Lodge would do something to Finex eventually. I'm going to have a first generation, and I'm so glad. Well, I agree it was probably inevitable. And there are business reasons for it. Yes, I don't deny that. I mean, Lodge is a business. There's no, also, you have to say that. They're an excellent business with great customer service, but they are still a business. And their number one purpose is to generate revenue. So when they acquired Finex, um, obviously so that they could enter the luxury cast iron cookware market, it was probably inevitable that they would make that kind of a change to the Finex pans. So whether or not you want to curse them, that's just really how it turned out to be. All right. Anyway, so far so good. Okay, so now anyway, I've managed to point out at least most of these Dutch ovens at this point. Going over these things here, there are a few things I think I have not talked about enough yet, and that would probably be moving more towards the left. In fact, I had better step away here again, more towards the left, which is where a lot of the other baking pans come in. I've got two cast iron bread pans there. One is a standard size cast iron bread pan, and one is the newer Lodge large baking pan that they came out with only within, like, what was it, the last year or so? So, yeah, how about we do a comparison? This is a Camp Chef baking bread pan. It is not a Lodge bread pan. It's maybe a fraction of an inch bigger than the Lodge bread pan. This, on the other hand, is the Lodge large baking pan. I like that name. I like the way it rolls off the tongue. Lodge large bread pan. And there we are. There is a standard bread pan versus the large bread pan. And as you can see, there's like maybe a couple of inches or so worth of extra space in the large bread pan. I've seen no evidence of any skillets from Cracker Barrel. I know. I actually want to take a trip there this weekend just to look and see if they have put out their new skillets yet. All right, Lodge keeps us on our toes. Yes, exactly. I checked their new website weekly. Yeah, yeah, the Lodge bread pans. Well, as I said, the top one is a Camp Chef pan. But either way, yeah, it seems like every single cast iron bread pan has all been about the same size until Lodge came out with this new one only within the last year or so. And yeah, I fell for temptation again and had to get it, although it did not cost $100. Did it? And then there's this weird little pan, which is very unusual because it looks like a vintage ham boiler. This is another one of those ones that I saw a photo of this on the internet and I thought it was cute. And I did not think I would ever find it in real life until I did. I stumbled across it at a giant flea market in Sevierville, Tennessee. And the seller was selling this thing for $15. So yeah, $15, you better bet, you better believe, sold. I did not want to pass it up. This particular pan is not by Lodge. It was in fact made by a small independent manufacturer down in those days, around the 1930s or so. And I do not remember the name, unfortunately. I've got to look the name of this thing up again. But yeah, this thing looks exactly like your typical ham boiler from those days, doesn't it? And no, it is not a salesman sample. So I'm not even going to get into that, the whole thing about the salesman samples. But yeah, I mean, what can you do with this? Well, it makes a great bread pan, doesn't it? So yeah, I love that weird little pan. Yeah, exactly. I'm actually quite happy to have it. Rocket Caver. We have one of those. This would be a good bathtub for my dog. Well, other than the fact that it's cast iron, why not? All right. So far, so good. Ugh. Um, moving right along here. As I mentioned, over there on the left we are getting into the other baking pans, the enameled ones, and two that are not enameled. Right there in the center, the white one, that is actually a pretty generic Chinese-made enameled cast iron casserole pan. And I bought that brand new with a label on it, and it really didn't have any manufacturer's name. It was literally a enameled cast iron baking pan. I bought it at a restaurant store in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I bought it especially because I went out looking for a cast iron lasagna pan. I was really early into my cast iron obsession. I wanted to do everything in cast iron. And so when I wanted to recreate my Italian grandmother's lasagna recipe, I wanted to do it in cast iron. And so as a result, I ended up getting that enameled cast iron baking pan. Yeah, I haven't shown it very much, so I think I'll bring this to you. Careful. Ugh. This thing is pretty heavy too. But yeah, what can I say? It's got a nice enameled inside. The bottom it is still enameled. It has the kind of rough enamel that you see on some pans, like, oh, I don't know, like stove, for instance. And it's got a nice, it's got a nice color for it. It's a 9 by 13 baking pan. And needless to say, a 9 by 13 baking pan is incredibly useful. So yeah, I am glad that I acquired it, even if it is made in China. Ugh. Immediately to the left of that, I want to be sure I didn't hit the mute button. Immediately to the left of that are the Lodge casserole pan from their bakeware series. That was given to me by my brother as a Christmas present only about 2 years ago. Then over to the right is the Lodge, what did they call it? The big rectangular roaster, the large rectangular roaster, the huge pan that they apparently based off of a wagon. I'm not sure if it was a radio flyer wagon or some other wagon, but apparently they used the wagon as a design for their big, huge rectangular roaster. That particular one is the legacy pan that Lodge came out with a few years ago, and it is not the original. I have used that one as well as a deep fryer, and that does a great job. Even though it's not really that deep, it's deep enough to do some serious fried chicken, and it's big enough that I can make 8 pieces of chicken at once that particular pan when I deep fry make fried chicken. So yeah, that makes a great chicken fryer as well. Anything good in the lye tank? Hello, Tim Boisvert. I have a few things in the lye tank, and in fact, maybe within the next couple of weeks or so, that's going to be another live video here because it's definitely time to do my spring cleaning. Remember, when you make those spiral potatoes, ha ha ha, you'll get to use your cast iron potato peeler device plus a cast iron to deep fry them. That's certainly true, yes. Nothing better for a casserole than a ceramic lined 13 by 9 pan. Exactly, Jim Glatar. So that's why I'm glad to have it. Deep fish fryer. I have 2 of the deep fish fryers I had mentioned before. One from Lodge and one from Birmingham Stove and Range. Imagine the toe stub from that. I don't have to imagine the toe stub from that. I have experienced the toe stub from that. What fun. Do you have any Lodge cast iron? I think that's pie plates. As a matter of fact, I do. And it's over there in the kitchen, which I forgot to bring out. Let me get one right now. This was the other part of their bakeware series, of course, the Lodge pie plate, which is essentially a skillet. This is really just a cast iron skillet in the shape of a pie plate because you can do anything in this. You can fry stuff in this. You can, as well as making pies, you could just very well use this as an actual frying pan because why not? It's made of cast iron. It has the nice little design on the top, though, of course, that makes it really, really useful for making pies. But there is absolutely no reason why you could not use this as a cast iron skillet as well as a pie plate. Lodge did not make a shallow sportsman fish fryer. That is true. They never did. They never did reproduce the shallow fryer, which is too bad because, as I mentioned, that shallow fryer is a really, really useful pan. All right, got the beast to feed and schoolhouse of kids. Have you shown off your fancy handled pan yet? It's my favorite. Oh, okay. Well, I can go and get that. I was doing skillets last week, and I think I did show it off last week, but I might as well show it off now too. Why not? Besides, that way you get to watch me go tiptoe through all my cast iron again, like that. Ugh. All right. Hmm. There we are. All right, we got a new rectangular fish pan, then found a vintage one. Well, that sounds good. Oh, that's what it was, the Lodge fish pan. Can't believe I forgot the name of it. I can cook 17 pieces of chicken in my number 14 Lodge skillet. Wow, that is certainly impressive. I'm thinking you're not deep frying them, but yes, I believe you could stuff all that chicken in there. Have you ever sold a cast iron piece which you now regret selling? I don't sell cast iron very often. And thinking it over, I am really having difficulty thinking of a cast iron piece that I got rid of and then regretted it and then regretted it. But one thing at a time. You asked for it. Here is the fancy handle pan, the single spout pan with a very prominent gate mark on the bottom. This is number 9 size, and it does indeed have the fancy handle. This was again a Brimfield score, and I've told this story before that I bought this along with a Griswold lid that fit on top of it for $25. And the guy who sold it to me said that most of the money was going towards the lid. He didn't even consider this to be very valuable. So I ended up getting this. Of course, then I found out that this particular pan had two big cracks in it. And yet I decided to actually take the time and have this pan welded. And I am very glad I did. I have been using this pan ever since. It's got a decent seasoning on it, too. All right. You blame me for some of your collection. Okay. I will accept that blame. Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, handsome. Yeah, I love that thing. Well, thank you very much, Kirk. Let me put this to the side. Yes, you are correct. Putting these things away is really going to be an interesting chore so far. Okay, I have made it through the baking pans. Over. Let me step over to the side again, so because I'm blocking the view. Over there in the back are my enameled Dutch ovens, all of which I have talked about recently, and they are also in my $100 cast iron pan video. Way there in the back corner is the stove 13-quart enameled Dutch oven, which I got especially as a replacement for the Le Creuset Dutch oven after that one wore out. And I do not regret that, especially because that is probably the best cooker or maker of Italian pasta sauce. And since I come from an Italian family, that definitely makes it worth it. I've made other kinds of stews in that pot as well. And then immediately next to that are the two USA enameled Dutch ovens that I was lucky enough to have something of a Christmas miracle occur when I ended up getting two of them, even though I only ordered one. I've already told that story before, that it was a fortunate accident, and I reported it to Lodge, and they told me I could keep it. So I'm more than happy to have two of their 7-quart USA enameled cast iron Dutch ovens. Down there next to that, a little smaller, is a heart-shaped enameled Dutch oven. That one came from Bed Bugs and Beyond. And in fact, it's their house brand. Wait a second, didn't Bed Bugs and Beyond go out of business? But anyway, when they were around, that was their house brand. I think I paid $20 for that heart-shaped enameled Dutch oven. Those heart-shaped enameled Dutch ovens have gotten very popular, especially around Valentine's Day. And that one is one that I am glad to have. I suppose I could replace it one of these days, but I mean, so far it works just fine. Handsome Stone, I found one of your early Facebook posts where you were going to use JB Weld on a cracked pan. Was there a follow-up? Yes, actually. No, did not use it on a cracked pan. I used JB Weld on a cast iron bunt pan, one that actually had holes in it, not cracks, but holes. I'm thinking those holes, in fact, were casting flaws because they were tiny little pinholes. Well, one of them was like maybe about a millimeter wide or so. So yeah, they were big enough that I made a lot of efforts to finally try to plug those holes up. I used beeswax, which melted. I used regular other kinds of seasoning, none of which held, until finally I got the idea of using JB Weld. It worked. It worked great. I put the JB Weld into those pans, and then I seasoned over them using a regular, using the usual cast iron seasoning process, and they worked great. Um, I did indeed look on JB Weld's website and found that yes, their JB Weld was food safe. So that's when I knew it was safe enough for me to try it. However, I do not know if JB Weld would be a sufficient seal for a cracked cast iron skillet. As I said, those were holes or pinholes or manufacturing flaws in that pan. So they were not exactly weak spots. So I do not know again if I would recommend using, no, I would not recommend using JB Weld to seal a cracked cast iron skillet. I live a bachelor's life. Yes, I do. That's definitely sure. All right, I'm stripping copper wire while listening. Oh yeah, you mentioned your copper wire score. But anyway, Handsome Stone, I hope that answers that. That particular bunt pan was one that, as I said, I restored it with the JB Weld, and I did indeed bake several cakes with it. But you know how I mentioned I had three of those bunt pans at the same time, and I ended up giving one of them away, and that was the one. I gave that one away to the sister of one of my closest friends because she wanted to give a cast iron Christmas present, and so I let her give that away as a Christmas present, and I don't regret it. Which comes back to that question a little earlier: have you gotten rid of cast iron and regretted it? Thinking this over, right at this moment, I still have to say no. I do not regret the cast iron that I have not kept. Things like a Birmingham stove and range number 12. I had a number 12 skillet. I ended up selling it. And the reason why I sold it was because I was not using it. I've got Stumpy, my number 14. And because I've got Stumpy, I got no use out of that number 12 skillet. So I ended up selling it, and I do not regret it, which also makes me feel good because it tells me I'm not a hoarder and I'm not a completist. You know, I am not obsessively trying to get a complete collection of any kind of skillet, like 3 through 14 of BSNR, for instance. I am not dissing anybody who is on a quest to do that. If you really want to collect yourself a whole set of any kind of skillet, that, of course, is your right to do so. And I am not going to criticize you for that. More power to you, and I hope it succeeds. Mrs. R wants to know if the Camp Chef pan is rough. Um, I would say the Camp Chef pan has about the same kind of surface as a Lodge pan. I mean, Camp Chef, really, the quality of Camp Chef is very good modern day stuff. Camp Chef is probably about the equal to Lodge in terms of quality. A lot of people turn their nose up at Camp Chef, of course, because it's made in China. So there is that. However, on the other hand, if you want a decent cast iron pan and you have the opportunity to get a Camp Chef one, I would not hesitate. I mean, if you could see in this light here, this is really not a really rough surface. So I would indeed say, especially since it's really not that expensive, if you want to take a chance on a cast iron cake bread loaf pan, you could go with Lodge, you could go with Camp Chef. Either one would be a good investment. All right. It's dark, so time to shut off the ovens outside and wait on the so-called fishermen. Oh, that sounds interesting. I love JB well, but would not use it on vessels considering temperature and fluctuation. Yeah, there is that as well, William Hurt. And I actually did consider that as well when I used it to plug that bunt pan. Because you consider this, the bunt pan is practically exclusively used for baking, meaning that most of the time it's going to go into the oven at temperatures of maybe 300 to 400 degrees. It is not going to be heated up on top of the stove top to like 500 and 600 degrees. So, in that respect, the JB Weld once again made a safe option for sealing those pinholes in that baking pan. I don't have their camp oven, but it has a neat innovation with a thermometer hole in the rim. Yes, that is true, Handsome Stone. I have seen Camp Chef camp ovens in action, and you are exactly right about that. I see now starting a fire with a leaky. Okay, I see me now starting a fire with a leaky JB welded pan. Yes. Once again, I will not recommend using JB Weld to seal a cracked cast iron pan. You will either have to go for a professional welder or you'll just have to get rid of it. It's unfortunately one or the other. The cookware ain't bad, Camp Chef. Yes, exactly. Are you going to do a live tank reveal show soon? Yes, I meant that was asked earlier this evening. I think you're the same guy who asked it. And yes, probably in about a couple of weeks or so, maybe in fact for the one at the beginning of May, I think I will. That will be the live tank reveal. All right. So I've actually managed to get through just about all of these pans, and I'm quite happy about that. I talked about the baking pans, cornbread pans, the bunt pans, the Dutch ovens. I only talked briefly about the Dutch ovens because, I'm always using these Dutch ovens. You've seen these Dutch ovens in use quite a few times. The enameled pans and the baking pans. Here I go again. And on the whole, oh, this is quite a collection. I mean, I have really gone overboard, I think, acquiring all of these cast iron pots, especially because I've been doing my best to use all of them. That has really been probably been the most difficult part, finding the excuses to go through all of these Dutch ovens and all of these cake pans and really keep them all fresh and seasoned. But I guess that's part of the fun of it because yeah, indeed that's been an adventure and definitely a learning experience and one that I have not regretted. So, but excuse me again. I do apologize for that, folks. But anyway, as you said, I've lived a bachelor's life. So, I mean, again, even though I'm now kind of like joining a new family, and I actually am having some trouble finding the time to make my cooking videos, but I'm doing my best. Um, Even so, I'm, I think probably living by myself and having nobody to tell me no has been a big reason why I've been able to acquire all of these cast iron pans. However, in my case, as I said, I'm glad that they're not just simply sitting in a corner gathering dust and rust. I'm doing my best to use them and I'm going to continue using them because, of course, that's what they're there for, but also because it's fun. Is it warming up enough yet to pull out your tank yet? You got some funny weather. Well, that is true. We had snow today. April 16th, we had snow. However, if the weather forecast is accurate, today may very well have been the last day for that. Today might be the last day I had to keep Miss Mobley inside all day. And she doesn't like that. She loves going out. But I think starting tomorrow, I'll be able to let her out every day. The weather is slowly warming up. And yes, I would say it is probably time to do the reveal of the lie tank. So again, I will plan that for, like, say, around the beginning of May or so. Just go live where you can cook your dinner. That's what others do. Yeah, Val, what's your temp now? Yeah, Val lives only a little bit north of me, I think, in mid-state New York, so her temperatures are probably similar to mine. But okay, we've gone. Okay, as anyway, what can I say? As I said, this is the rest of my cast iron cookware collection. There are probably still a few pans still sitting there in the kitchen, but I've done my best to reveal them as much as I can. Oh, it took 2 weeks to do this just because I've gone crazy and acquired this kind of a collection. But I am very glad to have acquired this collection. Oh, how could I forget? I got this at the National Cornbread Festival last year. I've shown it off a couple of times, and I'm quite happy to have this. The Lodge rope handled lid, the one with the ARC logo on it, no less. So yes, this I is just approaching. I've had 1 year of owning and using this, and it isn't great. It is great because it is actually a deep lid. It has much more room than your typical Lodge cast iron lid. So yeah, this is one of those things that once again it was a deal that I am very happy to have managed to score. All right. Won't do no good to tell you no again. Yeah, exactly. We only hide it under your seat. Oh, yeah. I did a little video about that, didn't I? Cats are okay outside in cold weather. Yes, I know that, but I really don't want to let her out in cold weather. Uh, I, I don't know. Maybe I'm spoiling her, but I would rather she stay inside where it's warm, especially since Miss Mobley does not fight. Unfortunately, she is bullied by the other cats, by the neighborhood cats. They literally walk past her, and there is one neighborhood cat that just comes into my house all the time and tries to eat her food. Because of this, I have to take her in at night and close the door so that no animals get in at night and take her food. But I do my best, and so far, I've managed to keep that little rat from eating her food, at least so far this year, and hopefully it will always be like that. However, I've also come to a decision regarding Miss Mobley. When the weather gets cold again this fall and I close the door permanently, I'm thinking that's when I'm actually going to get another cat as a companion for her. I'll get that cat during the fall so that he can live here for a few months over, and get used to everything, get used to this home and get used to Miss Mobley and all that, and get used to me before I actually try letting him out next spring. But that's all next year. Right now, on the other hand, I bet there's more somewhere in there. I would say there certainly is. Among other things, of course, there's all the rest of my pans that are still hanging up there. However, we are indeed at about that time now, in that I've done my best to go through my entire cast iron collection. It took 2 weeks, and this is the result. I do not have an incredibly rare set of Griswold pans. Most of my pans are pretty run of the mill, in fact. They're vintage, but still run of the mill. I have managed to make a few very lucky scores, and I'm very glad to have done that. Although that's mostly because of luck. I cannot claim to have any kind of magical powers or skills or anything like that. I just happen to be at the right place at the right time. And having a little bit of knowledge helped in that I was able to recognize a good cast iron pan. And so I was able to acquire it at just the right time. But that's luck, really. And really, all I can say is that if you keep it up, you will make a score that you will not certainly not regret. And that's really about all I think I could say about that. I don't blame Miss Mobley. She's spoiled and boogie. But yeah, I hope your I hear I bet your floor joints are creaking. Well, they've been creaking since I first moved in here. This house is over 100 years old. It dates back to the year 1920. And because I was actually given the original copies of the original deeds to this home when it was first built. So that's how I knew it actually did go through the Great Depression. But, well, here's hoping at least I can stay in this home for the rest of my life. And nonetheless, though, yes, William Hurt, fun show. And despite the fact that my voice is still hoarse and I'm still coughing, I'm really glad to have been able to do this all with you tonight, because I really enjoy doing these kind of videos here. Just talking about my hobby or obsession. And I can only hope I do my best to entertain all you folks as well. So, I mean, I know it's a hobby we share, and for good reason, because, well, what can I say? Number one, it's fun. I mean, this is something I never would have expected to be doing 15 years ago. But nonetheless, this is really, I find so much fascinating about this, the history, the mystery, all of the details, all of the stuff that you can learn about American history as well as about cast iron, and especially the cooking. The cooking really is really what's the most important part. So, but thank you very much to everybody as well who have been kind enough to, as I said, to be here this evening. I've done my best to try to entertain everybody. And I'm hoping that just my standing here and talking for an hour and a half has not been too boring, so that you should be interested enough to be able to come back again next week. Considering that come this August or so is going to be the 5th anniversary of these live Cast Iron Wednesday shows, I'm really glad that enough of you folks are indeed interested enough in this channel and this hobby that you keep coming back. Because, again, doing all this with you is what makes these live videos so much fun. And I can only thank you so much for that. So thank you to everybody who's been kind enough here to be here this week and every other week. Hello to Granny Graham, and thank you for being here. And Jen MLV777 missed the majority, but yes, you can always watch the replay. I hope you like it. And Greg Hart and Cast Iron with Honey Badger and Jamie Ledgerwood and Val's Black Cat's Rule. Get a smash patty press. Much easier. Somebody commented on me about getting a smash patty press. Well, guess what? You know what? I forgot to show that off. Another piece of my cast iron collection, the Lodge Burger Press, which is actually pretty new. I only acquired this one, I think, about 2 or 3 years ago. Lodge only produced this one about 2 or 3 years ago. And yeah, this is a really great press. So for the person who commented on YouTube, well, I hope they see this because, yeah, this is indeed really, really useful. And I'm quite glad to own this too. But thank you again to everybody, as I said, who's been kind enough to be here again and Radagast. And next week I will be 76. Well, congratulations, Radagast, and happy birthday. And William Hurt and Cynthia Wesley and DB Cooper and Val and Pat Z and everybody else who's been kind enough to be here and take part in these conversations. So I can only thank everybody. And I can only wish everybody a good evening and, of course, to be safe because we're living in dangerous times now, and I really hope everybody is safe. But until then, we'll just be cooking here on this channel once again, and we'll tune it all in next week. So thank you, everybody, for watching once again. And as I always say at the end of these videos, see you next Wednesday.